saying that our first workshop had 4 people, and out of 4 people, only 1 was a paid customer. Okay? 3 were friends who had just come there to support. One of the most basic things that one needs to look at is how you treat your own people. Do you look at them as a cost, or do you look at them as an investment? Millennials were eating dirt at the age that these kids were making videos. And it's not their fault, right? It's neither generation has a problem. It's just that that's the time you grew up in. If you're worried about one person hurting your business to that extent, you haven't really built a stable business. You can't walk in and tell a senior person, listen, dude, stop. Or hey, get along. This is in kindergarten. Right? You can't just say shake hands and things will be okay.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of AtACrossRoads. Today's conversation is going to be all about work culture with a special focus on Gen Z and their expectations from their dream employers. What is it that works for them? What is it that they will absolutely not compromise on? What do CEOs and founders expect of their young workforce today? Let's find out about all this and more from my guest today, Asif Upadhye. Asif is the founder of a work culture consultancy called Never Grow Up. He specializes in creating happy workplaces for his clients. Asif's career journey has been quite unconventional. He left his corporate career in his 20s to get into a space where he had no formal degree or prior experience. Then what is it that made him an expert in this space? Let's find out.
Thank you so much, Neha.
Hi Asif, lovely to have you here.
Thank you, likewise. It's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity and the chance to be able to share what we think.
Thank you. So Asif, let's start with your career journey.
Okay.
It's quite fascinating. You were working with the top MNCs in your 20s and something that youngsters would dream of at that point of time. And then you just gave it all up to start your own consultancy and in the work culture space. How did you decide that, and was it some personal experience that triggered it, or did you see some gaps between the top management and the employees that you thought needed to be addressed?
So interestingly, you're right. I mean, was in a very comfortable position in my, in my 20s. One fine day when we were sitting with a bunch of friends over coffee, and we realized that suddenly, like, you could call it more of an epiphany, but of sorts. But I realized that every single person in that room, for some reason at that point of time, probably it was appraisal season or probably it was the end of the year, was not talking such great things about the company they worked at, or the workplace they worked at, or the HR department, for starters. I realized that, looking around, I realized that, okay, there are people in this room who have more experience than me, who have worked in different industries, different sort of companies, large scale, mid-sized companies, but they all seem to have the same problem. And that's when it hit me that maybe there's something wrong in work culture. We realized that a lot of people were simply just stressed out at work. No one was really happy about the place that they're in. We said, okay, maybe there's an opportunity area big enough to change things. I put in my papers. And since we didn't have any money, and I really couldn't go to anyone to ask for money, saying, okay, I'm going to quit my job and want to start a business. Heck, I didn't even know how much money to ask for. I mean, I think I was too naive at that point of time.
You were also newly married.
Yes, I was. It was a year.
How did your wife react to that?
Well, quite supportive, if you ask me, because the first person to discuss this idea was with my wife. And over the 7-8 years of WorkX, whatever money was in my Provident Fund account, I asked my last employer to encash it.
And what about the initial struggles? Like, you got into HR without a degree in HR, without any qualifications. So how did you get your first client?
The master's degree that I have, although not in HR, had prepared me for a lot of things in life. We would go out on weekends and organize public workshops where we would invite people across organizations to just come and attend them at a nominal fee. Facebook was the only way to reach out to people. At least that's the only way I knew how to reach out to people. Okay. So I would put out these events on Facebook, tell people that, hey, listen, this is happening, why don't you join in? the initial piece was not very welcoming. That our first workshop had 4 people. And out of 4 people, only 1 was a paid customer. Okay? 3 were friends who had just come there to support. Slowly, word started to spread. More and more people started to register for these workshops. In one of those workshops, a dear friend and someone who used to work with JP Morgan said, listen dude, you gotta meet my HR team. And that's how we actually got recommended to our first client.
Right.
And then we started to do off like say an employee activity or an employee engagement activity with them.
So that's how you got your first client.
That is how we got our first client.
You run a work culture consultancy, and you of course have access to a lot of HR heads and a lot of business leaders.
Yes, some.
And for young employees who are entering the workforce today, the Gen Z. Yep. What, according to you, constitutes a happy workplace?
Today, a happy workplace is a work in progress workplace. It's not something that, okay, these are the 10 rules that will define it. Yes, there are pillars. There are your basics like treating people with empathy, being respectful towards them, being transparent with them, giving them the autonomy to be awesome. Those things are givens today.
Yes.
Any happy workplace is a measure of how people believe they are at that workplace and how they are with their colleagues at the workplace. If you're looking at a place that's happy, I think one of the most basic things that one needs to look at is how you treat your own people. Right. Do you look at them as a cost or do you look at them as an investment?
Yes.
Are they a barcode or an employee ID or are they people with names? Yes. Any place that treats you like a cost center,
right,
will always have an approach or a mindset which will not make you happy. Besides being inclusive, besides being respectful, we think a happy workplace is also a place that at the end of the day has enough people to guide you and yet let you do things your own way. One very important thing I must share with you is that I've had great mentors from my work life who've actually guided me through the process of entrepreneurship. One of them, of course, is my ex-boss. I mean, many ex-bosses, but one of my ex-bosses, who's actually been with me for the last 14 years, constantly checking in on me. And you need that kind of support system when you're building, say, an entrepreneurship journey or you're getting onto a journey. And I would say in our 14-year journey, it's only been in the last 7 years that we've really evolved into who we are. And that's who we've become today. Yeah. But
so that's great. So you've been lucky because you've had great bosses, but not everybody is that lucky.
Oh, so not all my bosses are great.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, there is a lot of talk all the time about, toxic behavior at work.
Yes.
And I think there's a very thin line between a toxic boss and a demanding boss.
Agreed.
And especially with Gen Z, like you don't know when you're crossing that line.
Absolutely.
So what do you have to say about that? Like how difficult is it for leaders today to make sure that they don't cross that line?
Okay, first up, it's very, very important. Okay, it's very important that you don't cross the line, but also it's in knowing where the line is.
Yes.
Right. I would say a toxic boss is someone who micromanages, who doesn't trust you enough to do your job your way, who does not give you clear direction. There's always room for mistakes as long as they're new ones. And a boss needs to identify these patterns, saying, is the person in front of me coming up with mistakes, and if yes, can I guide them, mentor them in a way that they can be a better version of themselves? Or is the person making the same kind of mistakes again and again, which then requires a different course of action? And another thing that's a strict no-no, I would say, is demeaning someone. Talking trash or being rude or abusive verbally in any form. I think that would be a strict no, at least from today's work worldview.
Right. Studies recently suggest that Gen Z and young employees, they would rather take a pay cut but work for companies that promote mental health, that are inclusive in nature, and for leaders who are emotionally intelligent. So what do you, according to you, what is an emotionally intelligent leader or an emotionally intelligent organization?
I think an emotionally intelligent organization first is one who has equipped its leadership and the leadership in turn their one downs up to a point where there's a zone of control. To be a little more empathetic, yet at the same time know that there is work to be done. I think finding that balance, that equilibrium across your people and building that equilibrium and that understanding across your people, not at the cost of your business or not at the cost of your people, that balanced. Right. That balanced behavior is what I would say is something that you should look out for in an organization. Most people check up on how's the culture about a certain place on, say, a platform like Glassdoor or on Facebook, or there are other platforms like Blind, etc., where you can actually go and run anonymous information and get sort of insights on an organization. In today's world, it's very easy to find out. I saw this in a TED talk, and where the speaker was talking about what sort of an age we live in today and how it's interesting to be a polymath. Today, we live in an era where there isn't one solution to a problem. So you need multidisciplinary approach to look at one problem from different angles and then come up with a solution. So having knowledge of maybe one or more departments is actually a bonus if you want to build something for the future. And only companies who are able to pivot really well with their people and their processes are the ones who will do better.
Right.
For long, we've been used to a hierarchical model where there's a clear chain of command. But the generation today doesn't believe in the chain of command to a great extent. If they want answers, they should be able to walk up to anybody and ask an answer. So being accessible to your one-downs, being open and transparent with your one-downs, being able to look at a problem and look at their opinion and make them feel valued, that you're looking at things from multiple perspectives, is what I think would build a great boss. A lot of people think that Gen Z is entitled. They're not. They're not entitled. They're just born into the internet. And the internet has given them so much more information we could have probably imagined. Right? Millennials were eating dirt at the age that these kids were making videos. And it's not their fault, right? It's neither generation has a problem. It's just that that's the time you grew up in. And I think more and more leaders need to be acknowledging this, accepting this, and somehow adapting their working styles. Are you building a team that has enough emotional quotient to withstand the pressure?
Sometimes what happens is, it's a tricky situation even for HRs, I feel, that, sometimes you know where the problem lies.
Okay.
You know where the problematic boss lies. But the person is very high performing. The numbers are coming in and, they don't know what to do, because if you let go of the person, the business is going to get affected. But in the long run, the person is affecting the work culture. How do you handle that? Have you been in a situation like that?
So yes, I've seen this happen in organizations where we've worked within the past. But here's an interesting data point for you. For every toxic boss that you have in the company, there are 6 people who are likely to quit and leave. Which means one bad seed can actually impact 6 to 7 people who might quit. And there's another data point that shows that for every person who leaves you and goes, the cost of getting a new person on board and training them and making them job ready is anywhere between 4 to 5 months of that person's salary.
Right. But what is the solution? Like, is it to just fire, or is it to try to change the person?
It boils down to 2 things, right? It boils down to your value framework as a company, right? First and foremost, always remember that a top performer can also leave you and go. A top performer is easily poachable, right? So that's fair, right? And that can happen to anyone. So worrying about your top performer or worrying about having to fire your top performer should never be a real problem. It's the fear that, okay, what will happen to my business? I'm like, what will happen if they quit tomorrow morning themselves? What are you going to do about it? Right? How much retention bonus will you give at that day? And there are many companies who've paid millions of rupees just to keep someone or just to make them go away quietly. Imagine the loss. Isn't that shareholder loss? The real answer is not about whether they should be fired or not. First and foremost, I think they should be confronted. Right? You have to confront the person even if the person is a high performer. Let them know that these are areas you are not okay with as an organization. And in all honesty, give them a chance to change.
Right.
And if it happens again, then you can already see that there are other people getting impacted by it. Why would you want to do that again? If you're worried about one person hurting your business to that extent, you haven't really built a stable business. How can one person have so much importance that you can't fire that one person? Then is your business even stable enough? I think those are fundamental questions to ask rather than worrying about what will happen to my business. I think any business is larger than its people. I mean, in that sense, if you have the right processes, systems, policies, etc. in place, a business is sustainable.
So you built Never Grow Up 14 years ago.
Yep.
What is that one thing or that one campaign that you're really proud of, which you did for a company and where you really felt a real impact in creating a happy workplace?
So I would say there are quite a few examples, okay, and we've dealt with quite a few complex ones. One of them was where we were called in and told that, listen, two of my department heads don't see eye to eye. And they're extremely senior people. And guess what? Because of them not seeing eye to eye, their departments don't get along well. And guess what? It's impacting everything. It's impacting people, it's impacting productivity, it's impacting every single thing that you could do. And we were called in and said, okay, but we can't patronize to this crowd, right? You can't walk in and tell a senior person, listen, dude, stop. Or, hey, get along. This is in kindergarten, right? You can't just say shake hands and things will be okay. But we had to make them realize. So what we did was we actually planned a 2-day excursion with their entire team, right? Where we created numerous situations. It was extremely planned, but for them it wasn't, right? We created numerous situations for them to be able to work together and somehow facilitated a process that said, listen, this is not about just 2 days of being together and figuring out things. You need to be able to understand that what you're doing has an impact on your people and on the company bottom line, right? The minute they understood that, and by the way, they realized this on their own.
What are those mistakes that you made when you started out
Made
as an
many
entrepreneur?
mistakes, yeah. Made many mistakes as an entrepreneur and as a boss.
As a boss, I mean. Yeah.
Okay, so one is because I didn't come from a business background, it took me a lot of time to let go as a boss. There's a larger fear of failure in your earlier days. Until the day we started normalizing failure. Like when we would not succeed at something, we would not make a big fuss about it. We would actually some days even go out and celebrate it. That, hey, listen, today we didn't do well. But that should not mean that we don't get to celebrate about it. But instead we learn from it. The day we started normalizing failure in our own teams, and normalizing failure not from a perspective saying, hey, go fail. It's saying it's okay to fail. And I think today we failed so many times at experimenting things. We're like, okay, theek hai. It's like, okay, nahi chala. Okay, fine. Right? But I think that's something you got to be okay with as a company. And that's really helped us.
Yeah, and that brings me actually to my next question, which is, you are a founder yourself, and everybody talks about mental health for employees, but very few people talk about mental health for the founders and the CEOs. And I think in today's day and age, there's so much competition, and with social media, etc. How do founders and CEOs manage their stress levels without impacting their work culture?
Okay, that's a really tough one. really tough one is because even I keep getting critical feedback all the time from our team. Awareness is key. If you're aware and accepting of some of the drawbacks or blind spots you may have, I think that's a start. Then, actually seeking help. And I don't mean from just a counselor, but seeking help from your peers or your closest one down, saying, okay, listen, how can I become a better manager for you all? It's important to know that if you've had a bad day, you are quick to apologize if you've made a mistake. It shouldn't matter, your status or your designation shouldn't come in the middle of you tendering an apology to your closest team member, saying, listen, I'm sorry I flipped, but I had a bad day. We don't live in that time where, Milka Malik Bhagwan hai. We don't live in that time anymore.
Yeah, so I think founders also apologizing, founders, CEOs apologizing to their, to their subordinates. At the same time, even the team acknowledging and forgive their bosses, for making mistakes, because
So
employees have that tendency of scrutinizing and like really, not forgiving their bosses easily, but they will expect that in return.
It really depends. Okay, so at the end of the day, if your intent has to be clear, right? If someone wants to hold a grudge against you, they'll hold it no matter what you do.
Yeah.
But as long as your intent is clear on to why you're doing something, see, being a good boss is not about being a people pleaser.
Yes.
A lot of times, bosses have to take decisions that are super tough, and they will not be popular.
You have a young teen at home.
Yes.
What advice would you give to her today to succeed in the corporate world later on? Like, what are those qualities that you feel that she should absolutely inculcate right now to gear up for the journey ahead?
I would just say be respectful. Just respect other people and their work. Purely from a organizational perspective, just respect people, everything else will follow. Because everybody puts in hard work.
Your designation, the way you write it is Director, Dark Knight, Never Grow Up.
Director and Dark Knight and Never Grow Up, yes.
Yeah, so you want to talk about that? What's the story behind that?
So, we're called Never Grow Up. Okay, so we can do this. But it also goes back into the philosophy of the company. When we started the company, we realized that as we grow older, as people and as organizations, we tend to put on a lot of layers on ourselves. We tend to become a little more cocoon than we were maybe the previous year because of our experiences in life. And everybody has good times and bad times to talk about. But the idea is that when you're childlike in your thinking, you are more agile, you have more questions, you're open to possibilities. And the entire idea of Never Grow Up is to connect with organizations and peel off some of those layers. And we think having an alias sort of supplements that philosophy. So every single person in our team member has an alias, has to pick one. And it's in our onboarding form where you get to choose your alias, and then there's a little blog that's linked in our email signatures that takes you to an info on why we are who we are and why we have aliases at work. But it's always kind of been a part of our DNA since the last 14 years. We've all had aliases. So we have the Hulk, we have the Panda, we have characters from Harry Potter, we have characters from, I don't know, any other place that you could think of. GOT, I mean, take your pick, right? The idea is not that what character are you, the idea is, do you have a character that you associate with that brings out your vibe? And we all have some or the other, right? I think to be able to connect with something from your yesteryears is a great way to stay connected to whether it's a passion. It doesn't have to be an alias. It could be a passion you connect with, or it's something that keeps you grounded. I think that's the whole idea.
Great.
Not to grow up.
Thank you so much, Asif. It was great chatting with you.
Likewise.
And I'm sure a lot of CEOs, founders, HRs out there would find this conversation extremely insightful. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Neha. Absolute pleasure.